Hi, everyone. How are you doing? It is Thursday at 2:41 p.m., September 22nd. The price of Bitcoin is $19,298. The price of Ethereum is $1,330. We are, in the past 24 hours, moving more or less sideways. We're up ever so slightly, 1.8% on Bitcoin, 1.2% on Ethereum. The market is moving sideways, maybe down a little bit in the past week or so. That's due to the macroeconomic environment, and that's actually kind of what we're going to talk about today, the macroeconomic environment. Not the numbers, not the Fed, but the environment so far as the culture, the people, what's going on in the economy that's weird and different than it used to be. Specifically, what I'm talking about is responding to this video from Stephan called Why 25% of Workers Just Quit Their Jobs. They didn't. 25% of workers did not quit their jobs. What he's talking about here is quiet quitting. If you're not familiar with this term, let me catch you up. It's taken off like wildfire on TikTok. Quiet quitting is a term being used, a misnomer if you ask me, for people who show up to their jobs and put in the minimal effort, i.e., they do the job, they do it to the degree that they need to do it, that they are expected to do it to get their job done, but then they go home, right? They show up when work starts, they leave when work is over, they don't think about it outside of work hours, they don't answer emails, they don't pick up phones, they won't take a meeting outside of regular working hours. They won't go above and beyond. If work is asking for a volunteer, if work is asking for somebody to take on a special project, if work is asking for extra hours, the quiet quitters are not going to put themselves forward for that. I've seen a lot of videos on this topic, and I actually would like to do a produced video that goes deeper into this because I have a lot of thoughts on the topic. But Stephan recently did a video on this, and like a lot of people, I think he looks at it as a negative thing, but more or less aimed at the people doing the quiet quitting, which are usually characterized as younger people earlier in their career. I think that's an accurate characterization. They are younger people, they are earlier in their career, but what I don't agree with is the characterization that these are just lazy people, entitled Gen Z people. I don't think that's it at all. I think what we're seeing is a changing work environment, economic environment, career prospects, as it were. Let's take a look at a few evidences for this. You've heard me mention this subreddit before. This is r/anti-work, if you can believe it. I was shocked when I first saw this. This is a subreddit for people who are hardcore against work. I'm not going to work. I don't want to work. I'm not going to work any more than I have to. Work is a sham. Work is a scam. I'm not doing it. Now, I don't agree with this sentiment per se, but I am sympathetic. Because if you go through and you actually read the accounts of the people here, what we're actually seeing is people who've become incredibly jaded. Inside of each cynic is an idealist who's been terribly let down. And these are people who started their jobs, started their careers, wanted to excel, wanted to do well, and they were treated badly over and over, so consistently, so often, that they are now deeply cynical, and they see the whole thing as a scam. And frankly, if you were in their shoes and you went through the same thing, I am not sure you would come to a different conclusion. You see, we are largely the product of our environments, our experiences, the people we interact with, the way we're treated. I know that you have an individual personality, individual drive. But those were shaped by your experiences, by and large. And if somebody is treated badly over and over and over, they're going to form a very ugly view of the world, and that's what we're seeing here. This is the top post. I filtered this by top posts in the last month. Your teachers are striking, your nurses are striking, your railway workers are about to strike. Nobody wants to work anymore is deliberately obtuse. What nobody wants anymore is to work in understaffed, overburdened, underpaid positions so 24 people can get rich. I mean, do you disagree with that? Second highest post from a week ago. I got a 25-cent raise this year, which is absolutely not keeping pace with inflation. I mean, that's quantifiably, objectively true. Nobody's keeping pace with inflation. Unless you got like an 8% raise, you got a pay cut in your purchase power. Sorry. So this person gets a 25-cent raise this year, and then I get to walk into work and see the owner's new toy. This guy bought a Porsche with all of his money while giving his employees a pay raise that does not keep pace with inflation. So they all effectively got a pay cut while he's buying new red sports cars. This person on Twitter reposted on Reddit, absolutely wild how the most important story in the country right now is an impending strike of 125,000 railroad workers that will devastate supply chains, and no one is covering it because it'd be virtually impossible to avoid the unions are completely in the right here. You may not have heard about this. I don't think it got a lot of press. There was a strike being formed with railroad workers to get better working conditions, because the reality is, if you go look at their work conditions, they get worked like dogs. They don't get days off. They work long, hard physical labor hours, and they have to, or their job will be terminated. It is weirdly out of step with the rest of the American economy, things like construction, even other blue-collar jobs. If you look at the constraints that railroad workers have to work under, it's absurdly taxing. I believe that strike has now been put on hold as they come to some kind of agreement, but the reasons for it, as they say, the union was completely in the right. And I'm not somebody who's like traditionally pro-union. Anyway, anti-work. I don't align with this, but I get it. I understand it. And I don't think if you haven't been there yourself, you can fully appreciate it. This is why I think maybe Stephan is missing the boat on this, and why so many boomers and maybe Gen Xers and even my generation, the millennials, I'm an elder millennial, might not fully appreciate and understand this. Because if you've entered your career and money is relatively stable and savings are stable and interest rates on your deposits in a bank are decent, if you've spent most of your career in an ascendant economy, then it feels like a fair shake, right? You may not get fabulously wealthy, but you can buy a home, you can buy a car, you can go on vacation. Young people right now who are early in their career or starting their career, they are legitimately, seriously questioning whether any of those things will ever be in reach for them, ever, in their life. Are we about to enter a 10-year dead economy like Japan experienced in the 80s? Maybe. Will these people ever be able to buy a home? House prices have been insane, and they have no indication of turning around anytime soon. And then you look at the work experience of people who go into the economy working at the bottom of a hierarchy, and they get treated badly. Why do they get treated badly? Well, that's typical of the bottom of the pyramid, but also any hierarchy, right? You're not going to get royal treatment at the bottom. But I think it's also a function of a degrading economic environment, right? If you're working the French fry or hamburger line at a fast food joint and your manager is terrible to you, it's probably because your manager never got the proper training themselves, and they are under tight constraints to keep delivering product, to keep driving revenue, given very few resources. They don't know what they're doing. They were in your shoes not that long ago, and they're probably never going to rise that far above their current position. Yikes. Everyone is getting squeezed. And I don't think it does much good to point fingers and say, well, it's the bosses. Well, it's the oligarchs. Well, it's the lazy Gen Zs. No, I don't think it's any of that. I think we are seeing a macro breakdown of the monetary system. Who's actually at fault here? Maybe it's the Fed. Maybe it's the failing dollar. Maybe it's rising interest rates. Maybe it's central planners who decided that they had the wisdom to manage an economy in a way that will maximize growth, but will definitely have sharp, harsh pullbacks that they then will personally be responsible for. I'm looking at you, Jerome Powell. And if this continues to degrade, what you're going to have is ugly, right? Historically, I mean, we've talked about the disparity between the haves and the have-nots, the pay disparity, the income disparity, etc. CEOs getting paid record new highs for their positions, while entry-level workers get paid nothing that keeps pace with the rise of inflation or the cost of living. I don't know if you've seen this, but what happened in 1971? Oh, interesting sight. WTF happened in 1971. Strangely, there is a decoupling of productivity and compensation at that point. Compensation has basically moved sideways while productivity continues to climb. People are not getting paid more, and they haven't since 50 years ago? Over 50 years ago? What happened in 1971? The United States decoupled from the gold-backed dollar. That's when Nixon did away with the final vestiges of gold-backed currency. And since then, it's been fiat money. Fiat meaning to declare into existence, Latin, to declare. So money that's conjured out of nothing, out of thin air, and allocated to the people in powerful positions. So the powerful continue to get more powerful. Their assets become more valuable, but people without assets, people say young or unmoneyed, early in their career, who've not had time to invest, are just scraping by one way or another, those people continue to suffer. I don't think this is because people are lazy. I think we see this in numerous places. What is r/Wall Street bets? Are these stupid, addicted to gambling kids? No, I don't think they are. I think they are people who have realized that the only way you can win is through gambling. The entire economy has become a big old gamble. Because if you just sell your time and you just work, you're never going to win. You don't get ahead that way. How do you get ahead? Big wins, gambling in the stock market. At least that's the philosophy here. You look at the growth of anti-work, boom, shot up in 2021 and into 2022. You look at the growth of Wall Street bets, catapulted by 8 million subscribers when the GameStop short squeeze happened in January 2021. Let's look at another one. How about late-stage capitalism? That's a term you've heard before. I've heard it as well. I don't like this. I kind of recoil when I hear it. But again, I'm sympathetic to what people are talking about because it's not like the criticisms they're levying are unfounded. They're pointing out some really ugly stuff. Where I differ is in the diagnosis, why it's happening. Not just that the system is sick. Why is it sick? These people are ascribing it to capitalism. Drawn to its logical conclusion, this is what capitalism looks like. Everything has a price tag, everything gets auctioned off, humanity degrades. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think capitalism is a tool, but the way it's operated makes all the difference. And if you're doing capitalism with dissolving money, you're going to have some ugly outcomes. I think what we see as late-stage capitalism is actually late-stage fiat currency. I think this is what happens when you have debased the money so much that people know they can't actually save for their future, right? They need to keep driving revenue with selling more and more garbage that people don't want, because if you just hang on to the money you have, it's going to disappear. You have to put it into productive assets. You have to put it into sales. You have to put it into cash flow somehow. And this is one that has also been growing steadily. It hasn't had a skyrocketing growth moment like the GameStop short squeeze, but it's been steadily growing for years. Here's another one. How does this relate? r/bad cop no donut. Ooh. This is a subreddit for people showing footage or reports of cops behaving badly. How does this relate? Because we live in a world where powerful people are not held to account. This is one that has also been growing steadily. Bad cop, no donut. Not nearly as big as the others, but, growing steadily. We live in a world where powerful people are not held to account. And those could be any kind of powerful people. Those could be police officers. That is definitely a position of power. That could be hedge fund people. This short squeeze on GameStop was earth-shattering because it was the first time that regular people played against a hedge fund with their own dirty tricks and beat them, right? Before the internet, it may have been invisible that they were playing those dirty tricks. Now people are realizing that the game is stacked, and maybe, just maybe, you can play hard and beat Wall Street and other powerful people at their own game. It's rare that people are able to do that, so the GameStop example was exceptional. If you don't think that powerful people are not held to account, I mean, look at the presidency of our last president, right? He did all kinds of things that, regardless of where you stand on the spectrum, it's reasonable to question his behavior, his activity, and to say, was he really held to account? Was he held to rules, or was he above rules? He is being investigated right now, but you could say that that's just a tool of the political opposition, who themselves are not held to account. Do you remember this one? There was a New York Post story about this that was buried, and then long afterward it was confirmed to be absolutely true, even though the New York Times went out of their way to say that it was not. Powerful people and institutions are not held to account. They are shielded from it, while regular people, Main Street, you and I, are subject to a punitive system that will extract value out of you any way it can. If you're not on the defensive, you're going to get hit. More powerful people shielded from their activity. Now, why am I bringing up Clayton Christensen? Clayton Christensen was an American academic and business consultant who developed the theory of disruptive innovation, which has been called the most influential business idea of the 21st century. He wrote this book, The Innovator's Dilemma, which was not written to be a bestseller on armchair business. No, it was, if you've read it, you know, it's actually very dry and academic. It's not a great read. What it is a brilliant idea that caught on. Disruptive innovation is all that Silicon Valley talks about now. It's the lens that people view business and innovation and technology through. Clayton Christensen is the man who came up with it. He wrote another book called How Will You Measure Your Life? He published this in 2012. He died a few years later. In this book, he tells a story about how he took on a new position and they let him know, now we're having you enter this position because we have a lot going on and we need really capable leadership to guide us through this difficult period in the company. And he said, okay, just so you know, I don't answer company emails after 5 o'clock. I don't answer phone calls. I definitely am not available on Sunday. And if my kids have baseball games, I will be attending those. And they were just like flabbergasted. Like, you're an executive. You're a high-level executive. How can you say this? How are you not so committed to the company? But it's because Clayton Christensen knew, and he'd done a thorough study on this, that at the end of the day, what you're actually going to be happy with and satisfied with in your life is not how much time you spend in the office, how much time you spend grinding away for additional profit for the corporation. Sound familiar? Does that sound like quiet quitting? Does that sound like people who are realizing that a life committed to the company is a bad deal? I think quiet quitting is a terrible misnomer, because all they're talking about are healthy boundaries between work and life, right? I should be able to live a life that isn't sucking my soul out on nights, weekends, and holidays. I should be able to do that. I should be able to have a life without feeling like my income is threatened. Clayton Christensen confirms that. This is an excellent book. How Will You Measure Your Life? I highly recommend it. Oh, more powerful people not held to account. We all know that congresspeople are conducting insider trading. Like, that's so obvious at this point. The New York Times just did an article about this. Look how many congressional representatives are involved here in trades that were absurdly profitable almost all of the time on topics where they are the point person for a committee that oversees the regulation on this. My own congressman is one of the worst offenders here, a guy that I've met and knew and liked before he went to Washington. Not sure I like him so much anymore. Okay, I've got a lot more thoughts. I've got, a lot of notes that I want to put together into a full script on this. You probably can't see that, but it is notes on... Oh, come on. There we go. Lots of stuff that I want to talk about in a scripted video, but we will have to get to that another time because I am out of time today. Quiet quitting, what do you think? Are people just lazy? Or are there trends in our broader economy that are squeezing people tighter and tighter and pushing us to the brink? I know I have definitely experienced that. I want to share some personal stories in the future on this topic, but I didn't get to it today. More in a scripted video to come. All right, team. Take care. Step outside. Touch some grass. Tell your loved ones that you love them. Do something you enjoy. Don't marry yourself to the corporate bottom line or even your own personal profit. I ultimately don't think that it's going to be worth it, because someday you're going to die. And I hope you've enjoyed your life before that happens. All right. I got to go. Bye.